This is lesson 15 of A Witch's Primer Revisited, and today we are going to discuss the concept of building thought forms. We had a lesson on raising and directing power, and on another we had a lesson on opening and balancing the energy centers of the body. And both of those skills that you learned in those two lessons are very important when it comes to the building of a thought form. The building of a thought form to create a result is using what I sometimes call psychoplasm or psychic energy to make your desire physical. We turn this psychic energy into a denser version of itself. And it's the same energy that you've learned how to raise and direct in that previous lesson. Now we are going to learn how to focus it into an actual form, into a physical location, and program it for specific results. There are three basic types of thought forms. One is what I call the quickie thought form, where you quickly create a thought form and send it on its way to do a job. This type of thought form is used for simple tasks that don't require much energy. The second type of thought form requires daily programming, from 1 to even 4 weeks before you send it off. And then there's a permanent thought form, which you continually charge and give a home in your space, like maybe on your altar or at your front door or somewhere in your home or business or car, something like that, where it's always there. Those are three basic types of thought forms. They are built in similar ways. It's important to realize that thought forms are very versatile tools, and they're used for many different kinds of purposes. They can be used for protection. They can be used for attracting prosperity or love. They can be used for malefic reasons, which we don't really go into very much because I don't practice too much of that unless it's absolutely necessary, which it usually is not. Creating a thought form and programming it is a straightforward process. You will start by raising energy, just like we taught you how to do in the lesson on raising energy. We've had two separate lessons on energy and raising energy. One of them was through the energy centers of your body or chakras, and the other one was a basic energy raising session. And both of them can be used simultaneously or one or the other. However you raise your energy, hold your palms in front of you, relax, and feel the energy that you're raising start to condense and build between the palms. This is usually forming some sort of a sphere or orb, anywhere from the size of a baseball to the size of a basketball. Play with this energy until the thought form feels absolutely solid, and then program it with your intention using a simple rhyming chant or some other kind of command. As you chant your desire, imagining a small scene playing on a loop within this thought form. Then you can color that energy ball according to your desire. I like to have some sort of affirmation, command, or rhyming chant that I can say over and over again as I'm building the thought form and seeing the scene and coloring it accordingly. If you don't have a particular color that you want to use, you can use that sort of generic witch light that we've talked about. That's the color of a gas flame or a lightning bolt. You see the scene and you chant your chant, and then you can see that electric blue light emanating into, for instance, if I wanted a new car. Automobiles are usually covered by mercury. And so let's say I'll color it yellow, because in my system, yellow is the color of Mercury. And I might even see a Mercury symbol, the symbol for the planet Mercury, on that energy ball after I've programmed it with my scene. Creating an energy ball between my hands, I'm seeing a scene of me being in the car that I want, chanting to keep that energy flowing and raising and condensing. And then after my vision is faded as to that scene, I see it glowing a beautiful, vibrant yellow color, and I see the symbol for Mercury on top of it. And then I can send it on its way if that's what I'm doing. But we'll get into that more in a second. Say you had a quickie thought form. Let's say you were going on a trip and you wanted to make sure that your baggage got to the carousel on time because you had some sort of a worry about that. So you could create a quick energy ball. You could create a quick thought form before you leave and actually throw it out into the universe to make sure that you get your bags right. So you'd see a small little scene of you picking up your bags with ease and no problems. You might have a little quickie chant, or if you can't come up with a chant, just say, I now get my bags with ease and pleasure at my destination, an affirmation that you can repeat over and over again. And just color it with that electric blue light and send it on its way. And then when you get to your destination, your bag will be there waiting for you. It'll probably be the first one off the carousel. So that's the basic process. If you're working with a longer term goal, let's say a particular type of employment, you wouldn't necessarily do a thought form on a specific company. I think that's too specific. I don't want to do a thought form to manipulate a company into hiring me, but I could use that company as a model in my mind. This is the kind of company I want. This is the kind of job I want. This is the salary I want. You could get all of that worked out in your mind first when you start your spell and create a little scene in your mind first before you started building the thought form of what that's going to look like. Because you want that scene to be really brief. You want it to be a really brief scene that proves to your deep mind that this thing has already happened. So after you've gone through the whole planning process of what kind of a job you want, and you've really taken some time, you can condense that down into a scene in your mind to say, maybe shaking the hand of the person that interviews you. You've got the job, or you calling your spouse or your mom or somebody like that and saying, I got the job I wanted. Something in your mind that you have determined means that this big, more complex goal has occurred. I hope I'm making sense. So the scene that you come up with in your mind, you've already decided is a condensed version of the larger goal. So you don't have to, when you're building the thought form, go through your whole list of the things that you want. It's a lot more streamlined by that time. So you've already predetermined that this one little scene in your mind of you calling your mom and saying, I got the job, means all of this other stuff that you've already gone through to plan out what you want as a job. When you're doing that spell, since it's somewhat more of a long-term process, you would probably do well having a longer building process of the thought form. For instance, for employment, you might also do Mercury. Say you started on a Wednesday for Mercury for this new job, and you decided you're going to do an 8-day spell because that's also sacred to Mercury. This is not necessary. You don't have to do it using this particular format, but this is the one that I might use. I might use the planetary number to determine how many days. Or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want to do a 3-day spell because 3 days seems like a good amount of time for you. Or maybe you feel like I really need the whole waxing phase. I want to do this for the whole waxing phase of the moon. Determine in advance how long you want, or if you don't want to determine in advance how long you want, then what you can do is say, I'm going to do this every single day until the thought form tells me it's ready. It's like a click where you feel like, oh, this is done. And that one's a lot more elusive because you just have to keep casting every day until you get this sense, oh, this is ready. I don't need to cast this anymore. I feel really certain about this. There's a definite click. Now, I find that for beginners, it's easier to have a set number of days that you're going to build a larger thought form in advance, because you may not have built up enough of a rapport with your own casting ability to know when the spell has set and doesn't need any more. So that's just my suggestion, is start with an idea of, well, I'm going to do a 3-day spell. I'm going to do a 5-day spell. I'm going to do an 8-day spell in advance so that you can start to build up a rapport with your own internal mechanisms. because sometimes you haven't had enough experience. You won't know what that click feels like. You just haven't had enough experience. But some people are real naturals at it, and they don't need to have a predetermined number of days. They just keep casting until they get their click, and that's fine too. So experiment with it. So every single day, you're going to come back and feed this thought form again and again and again. You're going to go there. Now, for that, what I would do is have a temporary house for this. Either you can project it into a talisman, if you're working with a talisman, or a charm bag, or a statue, or a picture, or just a place on your altar, somewhere where it can stay put. And if you tell it to stay put, it'll stay put. It'll stay there. Let's say I have a talisman that I'm working. I love to work with talismans because it's just easy. All I need is paper and pencil and a couple of drafting tools. I don't need a bunch of herbs and stuff. So I'll do my talisman, and then I'll do my thought form, and then I'll just feel like that big ball of yellow light or whatever it is moving into the talisman, and it just stays there. And then I put the talisman away. And then the next day I pull out the talisman, and then I literally extract that thought form back out of the talisman, back between my hands, and I start raising more energy. And I start doing it again. I start visualizing what I want, that scene. I start chanting, and I start putting more energy into the thought form, making it even denser and denser. And then I project it back into the talisman, put the talisman away, and I come back the next day and I do it over and over again. And then I can do that, like I said, either until I get that click, or I can do it for a predetermined amount of days. Then, once it's finished, I send it on its way. Now, if you happen to be doing this within a circle, one of the best ways to send it on its way is to send it straight up the cone. And it can go out the tip of the cone and go right to its destination. Do the things it needs to do for you to get that job. Sometimes it'll look like a balloon just floating up into the ethers, and then it'll go away. Sometimes it'll be more like a fireball that I just project way out until it hits the end of the horizon and I don't see it anymore. Play around with different ideas and techniques for yourself as well. And also the way that you project that thought form very frequently will have something to do with the type of goal as well. Some goals are going to have a lot more thrust to them. Some goals are going to be a lot more peaceful. Whatever it is, once you've done that multiple day spell and you know it's time to go, then you want to let that thought form go. Let it go. Now, if you're doing that third type of thought form, which is a permanent thought form that stays home, maybe you're protecting your space, or if, let's say you have a retail establishment, you can have a thought form that monitors for shoplifting. That kind of a thought form, you do need to find a permanent home for the thought form. For instance, if you're doing a money box, that's a great place for your thought form to stay. And then it becomes like a battery of money. It's working throughout your entire life, but its physical home is within your money box. So anybody that's done that money box spell knows that you reprogram that every new moon. And that's because it's a permanent thought form. So you bring it up, you open it up, you add some money to the box and add more energy to that thought form. You bring that thought form out of the box, in between your hands, raise energy, fill it with gold or fill it with green or whatever color you're using, and seeing money just flowing everywhere into your life. It's just a great visualization. Seeing money just flow without it from any specific source or anything. You just see yourself depositing things, see yourself having lots of cash, see yourself having lots of checks, whatever way you get paid. See yourself making huge deposits electronically, whatever it is, and just feeding that permanent battery. Other types of thought forms would be a thought form that you would have in your car to protect you from accidents and things like that. And sometimes with that, you can use a little mojo bag or a charm bag as a place to house that thought form. So maybe you put some different herbs or talismans that represent protection into a bag, and you can just stick it in your glove box. Every month, you take that out and add more energy to it. The thing about permanent thought forms that are housed around is you want to make sure that you remember which ones you've got, because they will lose potency over time. So you want to make sure that you keep them alive, you keep them fed. So make sure that you program them at least once a month. Oh, before I forget, I'll tell you the story. So I had this one craft teacher who also owned an occult store. She owned one of those witch stores, which aren't as popular these days because everything is online. But back then we would have, these witch stores, and she had a thought form that was really predatory for the shoplifters and things like that. And I'm not a thief. I don't steal. But for some reason, that thing just latched onto me and I freaked out. And I said, something in here is after me. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll call him off. And I said, what was that? She goes, oh, it was just my thought form for shoplifters. I said, what does it have against me? And she goes, well, we had some shoplifters in here and I think I just overly charged it. So it doesn't trust anybody. So I apologize for that. But it really was scary. It was a scary ass little demon. It was just after me. It made me want to leave the shop. So it really did work. But she did call it off. So these things are real. These thought forms are real, and they are the crux of any good spell. Any spell that doesn't build a decent thought form isn't going to have the same kind of potency. So just having the bag of herbs or just burning the candle, just sprinkling the powder, those things are fine. But without a thought form that's been built through those activities, it's not going to have the potency. For instance, if you put a thought form into some powder, every time you sprinkle that powder, you're bringing that thought form into that area. If you have some getaway powder or some kind of powder for people that were a nuisance, you would put that thought form in there that they are very uncomfortable and they have to leave. You put that thought form in that powder, and then whenever you sprinkle that powder, that's going to chase them away. For me, rather than doing it that way, I would just do a quickie thought form for that person. And if I wanted to use the powder, I would put it in the powder and do it just for that one person. Because I don't have enough people in my life that are so bad that I would have to have a permanent thought form for getting rid of people. The same thing goes with candle magic. When you're burning that candle, you want that candle to represent for you a place of focus where you can build a thought form. Because you want that thought form there, because without that thought form, you're not going to have the potency of the spell. Now, a lot of times these spells, these rituals that people that don't have any training do, they are building a type of thought form, even though they're not building it as intensively as they would if they had some training. And so when they do get results, it's because they've inadvertently built a thought form based on the ritual gestures. So if a spell is really well composed, it's going to go through a process of activity that in their deep mind is actually building a thought form that creates the result. Any spell that's got a good composition to it is going to be able to do that for them. Whereas if you've been trained in the craft and you know how to raise energy and focus, direct it, and program it, you can use any spell or no spell ingredients. You won't necessarily need as much stuff to get the job done. In fact, you can do it 100% without tools if you want. But you can practice building that thought form with your athame. You can practice building that thought form with a wand. You can practice all kinds of things. The sky's the limit to how you build your thought form, but you just have to make sure you understand the basics of it. You raise the energy, you condense the energy, you program that thought form, and then you release it, or you house it. And that's it. It's the crux of all successful magic. So you've been given the keys to the witchy kingdom here, and you can literally have what you want. But it does take a lot of practice. So get going. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.